All right, all systems go. We're live. This is the Trampled Underfoot podcast show, and your hosts are Mark Lindsay out on the West Coast and Eloy Escajedo here in the East Coast. This is the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. Welcome, one and all. Mark, what's going on?
Everything's coming up roses, and they need to be trimmed. I tell you, it was a beautiful day today. I don't know what the current temperature is, but we're finally getting a little bit of spring weather that I've been hearing so much about. And I mean, it was absolute gorgeous day. It is currently, believe it or not, in Southern Oregon, it's currently 81 degrees
Right
in
now,
March.
right now,
Right now it is 81 degrees at 6:30 in the evening, and it was an absolutely glorious day. So all is right with the world, but that's okay because it's going to be 70 tomorrow and rain's coming back for the next week. So enjoy it while you can.
what's that song? How's that song go? I don't know if this happens to you, but like I still have the memory of songs. It's just that the lyrics just completely, but you got the melody still with you. But some,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll tell you, and you tell me. Well, I'm going on a coast on all Frisco, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, where the little chicks are living the most. Da-da-da-da-da. Everyone, dun, dun, dun,
Yeah,
dun, dun, dun,
I'm
dun,
trying
dun.
to. Oh my God, I know it.
And we're out here having fun
Then
in
in the
that
sun,
old California
on your
sun.
sun.
Dun,
Yeah,
dun.
okay. Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually figured it out as I as I
I
was.
couldn't remember it, and I don't remember who sang it.
So that song,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what years. It sounds like it's from the '60s. I'm sure of it,
Mm-hmm.
um, because of the sound quality and whatever. And it was playing on the old oldies station back in the day. Um, Pretty little chick, wherever you go, ba ba ba,
Yep.
da, 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 with that sound. And the organ, by the way. So
Mm-hmm. 1964, California Sun by the Rivieras.
it's even older than I thought.
I was 3.
It's even older than I thought. I thought that was an event of the late '60s in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt right to say that that sounds like something. But you know why that is?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, that used to be played on the oldies station. But again, this is one of the themes that we always touch on. You know this song.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's been a long time. I know this song. Obviously, it's been a long time. But we know it as first hearing it, likely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, not likely. Most likely, definitely. In different eras.
Mm-hmm.
So my first exposure to this song is in the '80s.
Mm-hmm.
Me
Yeah.
farting around with the dial.
Yep. And
Yours was way back when, or a 15 to 20 year difference back,
yeah,
or 12, whatever.
it's just one of those songs that has been in the background throughout life. That I mean, okay, it came out in 1964. I didn't know that until I just looked it up. But it's been around for so long. It's one of those songs that's a part of history. It's a part of the consciousness. One of those tunes you don't remember the first time you heard it. It's just always been there. You know.
It's a beautiful song, in my opinion, but what happens is that the attachments that you add to it that give it
Mm-hmm.
grounding. When I think of it, I also saw the song being portrayed either in a Jim Morrison documentary with the Doors or in the actual movie as well. I might have heard it in
That's possible.
I might have heard it also in that movie Good Morning Vietnam.
It's possible. I don't know if it was in. It may have been in Good Morning Vietnam. I don't remember. But it was part of that surfer vibe, that era of surf music, with Jan and Dean and the Beach Boys, Surfing USA, and Won't Come Back from Dead Man's Curve. Okay, it was in Good Morning Vietnam. Thank you, Jim Dockrell. All right, I wasn't sure.
So that the quality of that song with the reference points that I make.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, that Good Morning Vietnam
Mm-hmm.
connection
Mm-hmm.
also adds a variation. But when we have this a song that comes up that's special, I truly, obviously it's talking about that, but I truly, before even going to California, I had an image of California,
Mm-hmm.
and that song took me there.
Yeah.
Even though I had never set foot anywhere past Florida. I mean, well,
Yeah.
no, past going west or
Mm-hmm.
the Continental Divide, or what's it called, the Great Divide or
The
whatnot.
Continental Divide. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I had my impressions based on the information and the stuff and just the vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those special songs. But in context with Jim Morrison, Jim Morrison was born in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I think either Jacksonville or Stewart or someplace like that on the East
I
Coast
don't know.
here. Well, he's a Florida guy.
Yeah.
But early on in that 60s era, he hitched his way out west and studied in Berkeley and became. So when you think of Jim Morrison, or when I think of Jim Morrison broadly without focus, I think of the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly matched, but he's not. He's a Florida guy.
Yeah. But he
Um,
fell. But he fell into that Southern California crowd and got into the various different music scenes. I don't know if he was ever a part of the Laurel Canyon music scene. You
I don't
know,
know that. I don't remember that part, but he
um,
probably.
but Jim says it was also used in the 1991 biopic The Doors. So that may have been your first exposure to it, or one of your first exposures to it,
It was
because
probably on the radio. To be honest with you,
two flicks that you mentioned, it was right there. That was in both of them.
I because I remember those two flicks. I also remember it on the radio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But um, so Laurel Canyon, you were saying, um,
Mm-hmm.
the whole story of Jim Morrison and the Doors,
Mm-hmm.
and that song and just that whole thing, it screams of California.
Mm-hmm.
It screams of this repeat
Mm-hmm.
of going out west
Yeah. Well,
into the great unknown.
well, that was that era of surf music, and it's right in that vein. It's right there.
There's something also, at least in my mind, when I think of the United States, in this sort of artistic, music oriented sort of scheme, sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
where I made that trip too, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
I left the East Coast and traveled west.
Mm-hmm.
And as I did so, which I've told you about,
Mm-hmm.
all these things were swirling around my head, even if it was in the background. And I saw the Old West, but the context was I have a destination, but I'm looking at all these landmarks
Mm-hmm.
that are part of the history that I grew up watching on
On
TV,
TV.
listening to on the radio, music and what books, cowboy imagery, just all these
Mm-hmm.
things that a person from the East Coast,
Yeah.
especially from the 80s, you know, um, it's not like I'm from the East Coast. This is
Mm-hmm.
a whole different world. This is a whole different world than where you're at, let's say.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And but just to round up the round off the bases, I gotta tell you, I don't know if it's me self, like what you say sometimes, is it that you're seeing like numerology, like when you see the same number. I don't know whether it's the chicken or egg, but I have
Mm-hmm.
to tell you this. When I arrived in California,
Mm-hmm.
dude, I knew what it was in terms of feeling. I mean, obviously, this is
Yeah.
stuff with emotion, but I felt like I could, like I I took the journey,
Hmm.
the travel to the West. I felt that many people, many Americans have done,
Hmm.
people across history. Um, but I felt that I had taken that, except I took it with the comfort of automobile with air conditioning and like
Yeah.
seating and whatnot. Um, but just the same, to arrive at the Pacific coast and look onto that when you're from the Atlantic,
Hmm. Completely different, isn't it?
it blew my. That's why I could never. If anybody brings up California, I know all the other stuff, the
Yeah.
political shenanigans, and all that crap. But just that place, the West Coast,
Hmm.
it's almost like it's the American journey
Hmm.
in a sense. It's not the only
Well,
journey, but it's the
but,
American journey. This is the old world
hmm,
in a way. Like if you say
yeah,
America, like,
it is.
and that's the new world. Although even that's the old. It's weird, dude. It's just
It's like 70% of the U.S. population lives east of the Rockies. I want to say something like that.
yeah. It's not a lot.
We're pretty sparsely populated out here.
Yeah,
You know, we're more spread out. We're not all stacked on top of one another.
that's right.
Mainly because tall buildings tend to fall over in earthquakes, but that's, you know, another story. Um, but when you stop and think about the stereotypical story that you've heard in a million songs, you've seen in a million movies and in a million TV shows of the person who comes from the East Coast and comes out west seeking their fame and fortune, looking for their pot of gold or whatever, they head out to California. Then specifically, they head to Southern California in hopes of being discovered. And I don't know what your motivations were in coming out, but you're one of the many, many, many people who actually made that trip.
My motivation. I had a dual motivation. I had a well. The main motivation was well, there was a lady there,
That's that. Say no more.
and that was just basically it was like just that, it was
Yeah.
that. But secondarily, I knew this was the land where the pharaoh died. I knew that this was the land where Hollywood was,
Mm-hmm.
and the land where all the cool bands were. And so
Mm-hmm.
I took all my recording equipment and packed it into my car,
Mm-hmm.
including guitars, everything. I practically and said goodbye to dad
Mm-hmm.
and grandma. Those were the two left living at that
Mm-hmm.
time, and they were like, "Whoa." I called my other family members and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm moving to California," and everybody was like shocked. Like from one day to the I told my friends too at the last minute. "Oh, by the way, I'm leaving to California," and I was like, "What?" And I got in and I took that drive, and so my secondary thing was to do some music,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I did various gigs there, but nothing really came of it other than me gaining that experience of playing in front of different crowds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the different locations like the Cowboy Palaces and that. But in conjunction, the whole thing was amazing, dude. And especially at that age, I was like 20 something years old. At that age, it was like the perfect time to be in LA, at least for me. And so, but when I hear those songs, like that song, it's also not only a West Coast thing, but it's also something back in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
And so there's an iconic thing to it, and that clangy guitar and
Mm-hmm.
the organ, it just all there's there's a lot of stories that are iconic from the United States, even though this is a young country, um that, interestingly enough, have, if it were a container full of of stories or liquid,
Mm-hmm.
it's spilled over
Yep.
and gone across the world.
Yeah, and it's all 100% that American pop culture, and like I say, um, it became such a heavy part. That particular song became such a big part of pop culture. It was used in a couple of really big movies that went worldwide, and were big movies worldwide. And American pop culture spreads that way. It's huge, and it you'll find it in some of the strangest places. I was watching a video the other day. I don't even remember which one it was, but reading some of the comments, one guy was talking about how he was in South Africa in the late 80s, early 90s. And he said, you get into an itty bitty little village that you're shocked even might have three light bulbs in this village just out in the middle of nowhere, and people walking around drinking bottles of Coke. They don't even have potable water. They don't even have clean water to drink, but they have Coca Cola.
Yeah.
It's just everywhere. Michael Jordan T-shirts in like Cambodia and what have you. It American pop culture goes all over the world. That may be good, that may be bad, depending upon the influence, but you can't deny that it's there. You know.
Yeah, it's impactful. And I think that to round the bases of it, that I think it's underappreciated by certain factions in the United States,
Mhm.
groups of people living out their lives, that some things are missed, which is that this whole experiment and going out west and seeing all these people, which were different than the people that I'm here around,
Used to, yeah.
but by a lot.
Mhm.
Even though they spoke Spanish, they were quite different.
Mhm.
In quite different, and even the people that spoke English were quite different. It was different,
Oh,
and
brother.
and wow, no, but um, I think a lot of people, and I don't know how it works cyclically. It looks like it works, but that don't capture the full. It's possible to do, but to understand the full essence of what this country creates, which is the ability for variety,
Mhm.
meaning people from different backgrounds, to install their creative ideas, make music, write books,
Mhm.
create movies, install businesses, be it taco trucks or
Yeah.
some sort of like um,
A
whatever.
bakery, a bakery, a record shop, a
Yeah,
guitar stop, store rather,
yeah.
whatever.
That concept,
Mhm.
that dynamic concept of just different varieties, I think that that's missed by a lot of people,
Well,
and I think it's a cyclical thing where people forget. And I think to a degree, we're in one of those cycles where people, like for instance, a Jimi Hendrix,
mhm.
very much American, I don't through and through for who knows how many
Mhm.
generations. He even had native ancestry in his background. These are
Mhm.
things that are part of the American makeup as time
Sure.
goes by. But people like that contributed to music in such a unique way, and
Mhm.
also people that come here that influence it from outside, and then people in here, like for instance the Beatles are totally British, obviously, but when they came here, people here caught that spark and said, well, wait a second,
Yeah.
what's all this about? And
Yeah.
so they consumed exterior stuff here in America, transforming it in their own way, and then issued out like the Turtles did,
Yeah. New stuff.
all these
Yep.
bands. And the same thing happens in so many ways. I think that across history there's epochs, that's a little too exaggerated, but there's little cycle bits
Mhm.
where people forget that. And I think that we're sort of in those
Well,
times in certain sections of the country's thinking, according to what I've seen out there,
yeah.
um, being
Well,
spoken.
just my opinion, but that's one reason why I've always thought that travel doesn't matter if you're, here in the US like you and I are, if you're in Canada like Jim is. I think that's one reason why I think it's so important to travel and to experience and to see. Because it's real easy to sit in your cocoon in the area that you've always been comfortable in
Yeah,
and never experience anything else, but form opinions on people that you've never met.
yeah,
And I had never been to the South. My until I was 20 years old, my whole experience with the world was Oregon, California, extreme southern Washington, and Reno, Nevada. Those four places is about all I knew because that's as far as I had ever traveled. And I noticed there was a difference in people. There was a difference in sensibilities. You get up here, it's a much smaller town. The pace of life is much slower. You get back down to the San Francisco Bay Area, there's more of a rush. Things are a lot more anonymous because you're next to some guy at a red light. You two may never cross paths in your life again.
like Miami.
Whereas down here, I remember that car. I know his bumper stickers. Yeah, that dude was funny. Or, oh, hey, there's Jeff's car. There's just fewer people. The
Yeah,
chances of running into the same person are just that much more likely.
yeah,
So I think to get out of your comfort zone, the first thing I went to Texas, then Oklahoma. I had never been to either one before. That was an eye opener. Different laws, different customs, different speech patterns. Then from there, back to California, then down to Alabama, then to Kentucky, then and Tennessee, then to Germany. So I got to experience a lot of these things and see people for what they were in their everyday life and also see what everyday life was like in those areas where we out here in the West place a lot less emphasis on how far away something is. We put more emphasis on how long it's going to take us to get there. So, a 20-minute drive in Southern California may be to the 7-Eleven, whereas a 20-minute drive for me may be 15 miles down the road, you know?
yeah,
So, just seeing and experiencing the sights, the smells, the feeling, that climate change, from what you're used to all your life to somewhere where it's not as humid or to somewhere where it's even more humid. Um, it'll really make you stop and think about some things while you're experiencing it. You know, um, I never dealt with chiggers or huge amounts of big mosquitoes until I went down south. Up here, there's mosquitoes for a few months out of the year, then they're gone. Down south, they'll band together, pack you up, and take you home before the big ones show up.
yeah,
So it was a totally different thing. It was a totally different experience. The people were different. The pace of life was different. The food was different. The atmosphere was different. And I thank God I was able to experience that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. It's we're talking about a landmass, part of a continent that includes over 330 some odd million individuals. Um, it's also difficult because I was green
Mm-hmm.
as one starts to explore. So when you're in Miami, growing up as I did, the predominant um, group of people and cultural stuff happens to be Cuban, with other variations too, but the over dominant one is Cuban. So it's you don't think twice that there's like five Cuban bakeries down the street.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's what's there. And so
Mhm.
you're walking about with your friends, and so you get a pastry and you keep walking or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, Apart from the McDonald's and this, that, and the other,
Sure.
but that's the overarching culture. And um, when similar to what you're saying, let alone going to California and the stops along the way, that was an
Mhm.
eye opener. But even when my mom had passed away and I decided to quit my job here in the comfort of the mall in the city life,
Mhm.
I couldn't do it anymore because everybody that I looked at reminded me of my mom because she knew them.
Mm. Yeah.
And now every time I see they're thinking, I don't know that they're thinking that, but the idea of them thinking, oh, poor, Eloy, look what he's gone through,
Yeah.
that didn't wasn't helping me try to sort of get balance.
Mhm.
So I basically had to wipe the slate of everything, and I did.
Is that
Um,
when you went to work out on the Everglades, or is that when you went to California?
I opened up the paper one day looking for a new job,
Mhm.
and it was saying airboat tour guide, come out. And I got in my car and I drove out.
Mhm.
Just down the road, it's like 12 miles away. But
Mhm.
if you're not going to the West Coast, you really don't, unless, or you're playing like casino stuff,
Mhm.
or you're fishing or something like that, you're not going to go there.
Mhm.
So it's not like you know, so I went, drove down that highway 41,
Mhm.
arrived at the place, and in front of me stood this girthy guy with curly, dirty blonde hair, and like I told you, the blue eyes that were like flashlights, but flashlights. I'm not even talking about regular, like light colored eyes. Not
Mhm.
none of that. I'm talking about like beams.
Piercing.
And I was like, man, this. I got out of my car and I said, man, this guy looks official because he had the uniform.
Uh-huh.
I said, dude, this guy is official. And I
Mhm.
was a kid,
Yeah.
and I walked up to him and I told him that I was looking for a job. He says, well, the boss is not here, but I'll tell you what. After we talked a little bit,
Mhm.
I told him, look, man, I really need a job. You know, um, I don't know exactly the details now. It escapes me, but I had just left my other job. I gave them a 2 weeks thing,
Yeah.
but I needed a job. I just and he said, I'll tell you what, if you come back tomorrow at such and such a time, you'll have the job.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, thank you so much, sir. And I got in the
Mhm.
car. It turns out I came back, I got the interview with
Mhm.
and I got the job, and I stayed there on and off for 10 years. Like I would,
Mhm.
after a certain amount of years, I'd go do something else, but
Yeah.
they'd always welcome me back and stuff. And so I was a tour guide for all that time. But it turns out that Les, this official looking gentleman,
Mhm.
was more of a party animal and wild card than you could ever have considered just by looking at him all official like.
Mhm.
Oh no. So I learned a lesson that, a person may look official,
Mhm.
but I don't know about that. So and so, but the world over there was different because these people didn't have Cuban roots,
Yeah.
cultural or otherwise.
Mhm.
And um and I got to see a little bit of of this variation.
Mhm.
I mean, I had friends here, but it's different because this is a place where people lived out there.
Yeah.
They were in the woods, dude.
Mhm.
These people were I
Yeah.
mean, this close to like scavenging and killing the living dead as they walked across. I mean, they were this close to like
Grizzly Adams.
outskirts of town, dude.
Yeah. Mhm.
You know, and well, they welcomed me. Some people didn't like me, as is normal, and I started catching on to little culture. So a lot of people felt resentment
Mhm.
towards who was basically dominating Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I felt like I remember these things. I was like that. Well, that's not my problem or fault. I'm just a
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, I happen to be the product of Cuban exiles that came in the '60s. But
Oh,
at the time, you're talking about over a million people. I'm not responsible for what a million people do, dude. I'm just
so
myself.
so so
Okay?
they went that direction.
In some instances,
I see. I thought it was. I thought it would be more like, oh, city kids gonna come in here to try to tell us how to do this kind of thing.
well, no, because there is nothing like that. I'm talking about certain instances. No, the
Okay.
majority of people were cool,
Yeah.
but in certain instances, it allowed me to see
Hmm.
critiques
Hmm.
from outside
Yeah.
the
Okay.
Miami bubble.
From outside your bubble. Yeah. Okay.
You know what
I
I'm
can see
saying?
that. Yeah.
So it allowed me to see other points of views that I
Hmm.
really wouldn't have considered.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
um, so there was that, which I
I,
found interesting as hell.
I think we're all kind of. We may not want to admit it, but I think we're all kind of naive when it comes to certain things in certain contexts. And how smart you are is 100% dependent on where you are.
No,
You
not a
know,
100%.
I believe it is because I'll give you, for instance, when I first went into the Army in basic training, I'm this outdoor kid. I was used to camping. I'm used to sleeping on the ground. I'm used to fishing. I'm used to all this other good stuff outside, outdoor stuff all the time. But when you're on a ruck march with somebody from Detroit or Philadelphia or New York City who has never been in a place where there's more than 3 trees in one group, what you know about the outdoors compared to what they know about the outdoors, it's a huge chasm. All right. I'm have my wits about me in the outdoors. It's when I get into the city that I become the dumb guy who doesn't know squat. You know, I can handle myself outside. I can handle myself in the country. It's when I get into the big city, I don't know the terminology. I don't know my way around. I don't know the hustle and bustle. That's where I look and feel dumb. Where a city kid coming out to the country, he doesn't know that's a squirrel, leave it alone, it'll leave you alone. That's an alligator, go the other way. You know, you take me out to the Everglades where you used to tour guide, I'd be lost because I'm not of that environment. I don't know it.
I could still do it to this day, and it's been more than a decade or two. I could
Yeah.
still get on the boat and like I can because it was a habitual at
Mhm.
a certain point. Um, but
So,
you'd catch on pretty quick. It's not like brains.
well,
It's not like
maybe,
rocket science.
well, maybe. But what I'm getting at is when I first get thrust into that environment, I'm lost bigger than shit. But that's okay. I know that it's okay to be that way because why would I know? That's what I mean when I say we're all naive and maybe a little bit dumb, depending upon the circumstance and where we are.
Well, it's
Because
ignorance. It's
we both may be able to quote Hemingway, we both may be able to find the area under the curve, but he may not know how to make fire with 2 sticks, and I damn sure wouldn't know you don't step off the curb when there's a taxi coming, you know? So,
so what I would what I would what I would if I sort of nuance is that I would say instead of dumb or something to that effect, I would I would I would classify it as um, ignorance or
yeah,
inexperience.
ignorance and inexperience. That's what I mean.
But I will suggest that if you take someone from the city
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't have knowledge of the woods,
Mm-hmm.
they and they have in their innate intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter where you place them; they carry that with them. But the experience of the environment that they're in or the situations that they're put in may be new, novel to them,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a learning portion. But the it doesn't make a person, it doesn't make a person less intelligent. So if you
No.
take someone from the country
Mm-hmm.
that's not aware of the city life, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
some people might, if they go to the city, they might be um, labeled as bumpkin or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, it doesn't follow. So there's the
But
cultural thing. Well, let me just make the nuance.
mm-hmm.
I know that you know where I'm going with this. There's or I already made the point, but there's the habits that we, or the what we grew up with, and then there's the innate, the human being. So they could easily adapt in certain ways,
Right.
and maybe not in others based on cultural things. But the intelligence part is not necessarily.
Well, yeah, and that's what I mean. Ignorant is not stupid.
No, it
You
means you
know,
don't know. You're not
you
aware.
just don't know exactly. You're completely out of your environment. As we were talking here just now, I can remember one. I say kid. We were all 19 and 20 years old, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old in basic training from North Carolina. I can't even remember his name. I can see his face plain as day. But he was out. We were out on bivouac. We'd done a 20-mile road march, set up our tents, and getting ready to bunk down for the night. We had about 2 hours to basically kill after chow before, lights out. And this kid from North Carolina had all of the damn drill instructors out there with him. He knew that if you take a flashlight and you hold it in a certain position and you shine it around, you could find a spider because their eyes would neon glow when the flashlight hit it. And I remember he had those drill sergeants going in circles. Oh, you want a spider too, Sergeant? Here we go. It was right over here. And he'd take off going 20, 30, 40 feet and shine his flashlight. Sure enough, there's a spider heading for a tree. And they're like, how the hell do you do that? He says, I can smell them. I can smell them, Sergeant. You want another one? There's one over here. And he'd point over. Come on, let's go. He walked them around those woods. It was freaking hilarious to see all these drill instructors following this one backwoods kid who'd known this stuff since he was 4 years old,
Yeah.
just leading them around, having an absolute ball and grinning from ear to ear. It was just hilarious to see.
Yeah, that's basically the same lesson where
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that these military men knew way more in many areas than this kid.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to that environment, the kid's
Yeah.
just been there.
Uh-huh.
And so it's just a matter of that, because I mean, you
Yeah.
know, but um so that was this 12 miles away or 15 miles away thing, where it was a different point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Um but let alone going to California,
Yeah.
where all of a sudden, I mean, it's not like I didn't know general history, but like very broad at the time. I wasn't interested. I didn't read about the West Coast and the history, other than like pop culture stuff and
I would.
maybe, So I'm looking at all these Spanish speaking people. I'm like, well, wait a second, aren't we the real Spanish people? What's this? Like, I mean, I may not have said that, but I was like, well, wait a second.
Yeah.
What are all these Spanish people here? I mean, I knew that there was Mexicans on the West Coast and Mexico, and I visited it,
Mm-hmm.
but that wasn't my understanding of
What
um
Spanish was.
right. To me, Spanish was, to me Sp- to me Spanish was from Florida to Cuba to Spain.
Mm-hmm.
That was my concept.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I knew that Spanish populated the Americas and Caribbean, to include Mexico and this. I understood that,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't pay any depth
Yeah.
of understanding. So when I see this whole new world open up with different cuisine,
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, dude!"
Yeah.
It was mind blowing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I even had a dinner with a Mexican couple that was family to the lady I was with, or friends, something
Hmm.
to that effect, or maybe the sister was married to the guy, something like that.
Hmm.
And we went down somewhere further south than LA and sat. And I remember, I think I've told you before, but he started to talk to me about um, Coronado, or I don't know what,
Hmm.
and all this stuff. And I remember thinking, okay, like, okay, I was listening, but I was like, whatever. I'm just enjoying this California experience. But in retrospect, I wish I would have focused and stuff,
Yeah.
because they knew that I was from Miami and stuff,
Hmm.
and probably was trying to add information to me so that I would know
Possibly. Yeah.
and share his background and stuff,
Hmm.
stuff like that. But from my mind, I couldn't match up all the things because I wasn't interested, which is
Yeah.
something that you often refer to.
Yeah.
But then again, I was a 20-something-year-old kid. Um,
Exactly.
so there's all these variations, but um, it was a learning. I was ignorant to a whole area of the United States, why wouldn't I be? Because all you see is on
Well.
TV. And so, but just to finalize, this opening up, like your German and French
Hmm.
experience, and this subtle one in my case, is potentially repeated no matter what pinpoint you are on the map from the United States or the world. But like we're talking U.S. So somebody from Seattle
Hmm.
travels out to Chicago, or
Yeah.
New York down to
Yeah.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
Things start to open up windows of you're learning
Hmm.
this whole world. But in totality, just to finish up, um, the reason this happens is that the United States is pretty, like you've said before, is pretty big. I mean, I
Yeah.
think Europe, we almost replicate, or Europe fits in something except for Russia. Probably, we basically are equivalent in distance and size, where you have enough population swimming around and this and
Yeah.
that, with different variations and all that.
Hmm.
And I just find that whole thing. But just to close it, is that I think that lesson of this variety is not being portrayed very positively.
I
And
think you're right.
there's nuance to that. But there's instances in today's world, in recent times, where I'm seeing cracks in the pavement, in terms of people's ability to understand what America is, and
And
whatever. I just found that connection.
and that reinforces my opinion that it's important to travel, because how can you know anything about any place you've never been? You can read all you want to about it. You can look at all the videos and you can see all the pictures and everything, but until your boots on the ground, you really can't experience it. You really don't know. You only know what other people are telling you. You're getting all your information third hand and you miss too much, you know?
Well,
Um,
one
your
thing.
trip, you said you didn't really pay much attention to the history in California. I think you did, but it was always in the context of
Having
music.
fun and
Uh,
having fun.
Well, you told me yourself that you went through a bunch of biographies of different musicians and different performers and different bands. And you went from hearing about the beaches that they were surfing to actually being on those beaches that they had written that music about.
Yeah.
So I think you absorbed more of the history of the art, because it's like you said, when you got there, you felt like you knew it.
No, but I read all that back home throughout my life.
Understood. But uh, it's kind of like reading about the Grand Canyon and then being there. You can read all you want to about the Grand Canyon, but until you're there, you don't really understand how deep, how wide, and how big that thing really is. And in a certain way, you got to experience that culture that you had only read about.
It was trippy. I went up to the Griffin Observatory, and I stood in a spot
Hmm.
where James Dean did that scene in front of the that point in the observatory.
Yeah.
Um, Remember that scene where he's with the teenagers and stuff, and
Yeah.
he's like ready to fight and stuff, and this and that.
Hmm.
I was standing there,
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, it's like
Yeah.
it's a reference point going back. It's mind blowing. Um, I was at the various. I played at various places where solo, where just with my acoustic and stuff, where the Doors played themselves.
Hmm.
They used to play at Cantor's.
Did
There
you
was
ever go to Troubadour just as a spectator, just to watch the
I
band?
passed by it. I don't think that I went in that I recall. Passed by it, um, but just that whole world over there
Hmm.
is it really is special, dude.
Hmm.
There's something about it. I don't know what to tell you other than there's something, and and it's true that Miami is special in its own way. It's home,
Sure.
but there's something about the West Coast, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know how to. There's something about the land, the temperature, the the whole thing that is really memorable.
Well, if I can tell you, if you get out of the big cities, because I've been in big cities, in all over America. I've been in big cities in Europe, Paris. Never made it to Berlin, but Frankfurt, Wiesbaden, Amsterdam. Um, I mean, all the big, not all the big cities, but a bunch of the big cities. All over Southern California. Steve's laughing because he was raised there. Linda's laughing because she was raised there. Um, but Portland, San Francisco, Vegas, Reno, and big cities may have a different vibe, but the overall attitude in big cities is you're in a hurry, get out of the way. You know, if you get out of the big cities where you don't feel that pressure and you get away from the mass of people, because you're in the big city, you are never the only person going that way. Doesn't matter where you're going. You are not the only person going to that grocery store right now. So when you get to that parking lot, there's 50 other cars cruising the same parking lot trying to find the parking spot you just scored. You get out away from those big cities where there's less pressure and you can find the parking spot right up there by the front door. Okay, there's a handicap spot next to you, but that's okay. It becomes a whole nother atmosphere again. You know, you take what you saw in Southern California and you transfer it up to Sacramento. That was a different vibe, or excuse me, San Francisco. That was a different atmosphere too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was totally different.
Mm-hmm. And it,
That felt like another parallel universe. California felt still attached to Earth,
mm-hmm,
and San Francisco felt like a parallel dimension.
mm-hmm.
Not bad. It felt iconic, but it felt like now we're in some place that's absolutely no, something
Mm-hmm.
different about San
Yeah,
Francisco.
yeah. And it used to be my favorite place to go. It really did, because growing up around San Francisco, we lived on the East Bay across. Uh, we had to go across the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge to get to it. Um, I did a lot of thinking, and the only two things that I could think of you couldn't do there legally was snow ski and hunt. But anything else you can imagine, you could do there. You want to hit a different restaurant, dude, you could hit a restaurant a week and never have the same kind of food, let alone the same restaurant. You could go have, Greek one day, and then Thai the next day, and or the next week, and then East Indian the week after that, and then um, Russian the week after that. I mean, just the whole gamut. Have a completely different style of food, let alone different restaurant. It was a wonderland. I mean, you want to explore. I mean, there are so many things to explore out there. I really loved it. And then it just kind of went,
I
you know.
remember when we went up.
Hmm.
I, I don't remember why, but there was a connection that I was insistent, adamant about us going to Sausalito.
Hmm.
I don't know
Okay.
why. I now looking back, why would I have wanted to? There was a reference somewhere there,
Hmm.
of something that I had read or something. But I was insistent. She said, "You want to go to Sausalito? There's really nothing there. So we got to go to Sausalito. Sausalito. No, and
Was it the
uh,
houseboats and stuff on the out on the bay? Was that what the attraction was?
dude, at this point, I really don't remember. I'd have to sit and reflect, but
Hmm.
I remember us going to Sausalito.
Hmm.
We crossed over and stuff, and we're in Sausalito, and then we did some driving and stuff, and
Hmm.
that was it. Okay, but for some reason, I was adamant about that, and
Yeah.
also I was adamant about visiting Jim Croce's cafe
Uh-huh.
down
It
in San
yeah.
Diego. I was
Yeah.
adamant about it. We have to. It was a for me. It was a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
You gotta have to understand that this is a kid from Miami, and all my life I had been digging through the music
Uh-huh.
and reading books and seeing the lives of these people, and then this guy that traveled finally ended up going out west, and I needed to go see and
Get,
talk to the woman and thank her, his
yeah.
wife. I had to thank his wife. This is because in my mind I was all, and so we drove there, and we got there was a little hole in the wall,
Hmm.
and there was a guy working there, and I said, "Hi, is I forget her name now, but I knew her name, I knew
Hmm.
her story,
Hmm.
I knew their whole lives." And
Yeah.
that's how I'm probably I was like kind of a
And
little bit, and
dude, I'm here to tell you, you were not the first person to do that. But go ahead.
well, so I walk up, and it's I don't know if it was Susan or something. I forget now. I'm sure we could find out, but wait, let me see. I'll tell you right now.
I'll look it up. Go ahead for finish with your story.
And so the guy was there servicing, and I said, "Oh, look, I'm here. I'm looking to say hello to so and so, the wife
Ingrid.
of Jim Croce, huh? Ingrid,
Ingrid. Yes.
Ingrid." And he said, "Oh, she's not here today, but I could tell you said hi." I said, "Okay, thank you so much." Um, it's a simple little something, but just
Hmm.
reaching that pinpoint on the map
Yeah.
of your journey and your interest
Hmm.
was pretty darn. I mean, I'm telling you, the West Coast is magical.
Well,
If they could just get their stuff together and stop with the stuff, it would be great because it's such a
the
wonderful
West
place.
Coast has always been a little bit flaky. You know, it's always been a little bit weird. California has always been like a half a bubble off plum. I don't know if it's because everybody there was shaken as babies for all the earthquakes. You know, we've got a little bit of brain damage or what have you. But
Yeah.
the West Coast has always been a little bit off. But I, uh, what you have told me, everything that you've just talked about, I see no difference in that and the millions of people who go to Paris and go see the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and the Arc de Triomphe and all of those things that we only read about over here. And you know what? When we went to Paris, that's the first thing we did. I drove around the Arc de Triomphe like 4 times, totally against my will. And we finally got to our hotel, walked back, found it, had dinner in a Burger King on the Champs Elysees. And it was just a matter of getting to see all of these things we had only read about. So I see no difference in us being a tourist in Paris and you wanting to go see all those things that you just talked about.
I mean, I, I I packed in a lot in that time. I mean, it was constant.
Well, how long were you out there?
It was about a year and a half to 2 years, broken up in two segments.
Hmm.
So first I went over, and then came back, and then I went over to stay, but then eventually
Came back.
came back because it was pretty much the cycle was done. And so I packed all my stuff and so the first time I flew out,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Was
and
that
then
the first time you'd ever flown?
that was the second time I'd ever
Oh,
flown.
okay. Okay.
The first time I'd ever flown was going to Chicago
Okay.
for it was a course
Mm-hmm.
for Shell gasoline,
Mm-hmm.
with my uncle, and so we stayed up there, and obviously you fly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not too keen on the whole flying thing too.
Me either.
I
Not anymore.
it just it doesn't it does I just don't I don't dig it.
Commercial air travel in the United States has become like a death march with matching luggage. I just no thanks.
No, I mean air travel. Period.
Yeah. Well, I'm so used to flying because I did so much of it in the army that it became old hat, and it just after after we came back from Hawaii in March of 1998, I said, okay, that's it. I don't care if I ever fly again. And then I flew one more time in 2017. I flew to Atlanta and back for that woodworking show in 2017 in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And that's the last time I've been on an airplane. And that's the last time I plan on being on an airplane because I figure, it's been, I won't say it's been uneventful, my experience in flying. We did have one commercial aircraft out of Hawaii have to turn around and come back because they got a warning light on their instrument panel. They turned around, came back, and then we got put on another plane and flew out. And then in the Army, there were a couple of emergency landings in aircraft. We were doing test flights, but it's been pretty uneventful, and I don't like those odds. The law of averages is going to catch up with me sooner or later. So it's
And I
like, you
don't
know what? If I can't get there driving, I don't need to be there. You know,
and I don't like why don't they have like a dial
Mhm.
to pressurize so your ears don't pop? Why
Well, they
don't they?
can. It is pressurized as much as they can.
No, but I'm saying reverse. They should have a way to regulate it so that okay, we're dropping so much, so let's increase so it can balance out so people can not because that you get pops, dude, that are
Yeah, I
stafford.
know. I know.
It's like
They do it as much as they can. Okay, because remember the equipment has weight, and so they do as much as they can. But the only way you can avoid that is, I'm telling you, chew gum. It causes the jaw movement, which works on your eustachian tubes, and you'll equalize the pressure. And
freaking
so, yeah,
man. That's so I'm not too keen on that aspect of it. Plus, you're
yeah,
stuck in this tube, dude. Give me a break.
exactly. You're stuck in a tube. If think about that. Okay, if nobody had ever done it before, and you said, I've got this idea, I've got a proposal, hear me out. I want to take 160 people, I want to put them in seats in rows in this giant metal tube, and we're going to send it sailing through the air at 600 mile an hour. Would you jump on? Hell no.
There's like these people that are all um like salivate over like, man, wouldn't it be great to go to Mars and live on it and live in these outer worlds? In my opinion, because I've heard a lot of that,
Mhm.
it is the most, for my opinion, the most ridiculous. There's nothing more adapt to my well-being
Then Earth, yeah.
than Earth, as far as I'm concerned. There is no other variation that I'm aware of, nor would like to fiddle around with. I like the
Dude,
ground, the air, the sky, and Walmart.
there was and Walmart. There was a question on a British game show that Linda and I watch on occasion, and there's that if you could vacation on any planet in the solar system, where would you go?
California.
And two of them said Earth, because one of the things that defines a great vacation is surviving it.
Yeah.
So, you know, the other guy's like, well, I'm thinking Jupiter because, one of their Jupiter weeks is about 6 of our Earth weeks. And it's like, okay, well, there's that, but there's also 500 mile an hour winds. It the atmosphere is methane gas, so it's like, yeah, surviving the vacation is probably one of the good points of doing it right here on Earth. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But then again, I can't fault people who have that adventurous spirit. And, you know, um, it took special people to go to the moon. It took special people to get in a rocket in the first place, but it took special people to go to the moon just hoping they would make it back.
No
Because
thanks.
we see that as a foregone conclusion. Well, sure, they're going to go and they're going to come back, but at the time they did not know that.
Right.
And in fact, when they did walk on the moon, Nixon had two speeches. He had one speech congratulating them on their return. He had another speech talking about how they were stranded there and there was no way of bringing them home. And if you look it up online, you'll find it. But
Talk about,
we just didn't know.
yeah, it doesn't
But
sound exciting to me
and that
to
doesn't
travel
appeal to me either. But we
that
need
way.
those adventurous people like that. We need people to be the first guy to say, "Wind it up, Orville. Let's take the Kitty Hawk and see if we can fly it." We need those people. It ain't gonna be me. you know,
Well, I
but
did tell you. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
but we do need those people to search, and we do need those people to adventure and to experience. Think about everything we know about Antarctica. We wouldn't know a thing about it if somebody hadn't gone down there. You know.
Yeah, the Antarctica thing. That's actually what I was going to say. I did tell you about the trip that people took, the flat Earth people,
Yes.
that a rich guy invited
Hmm.
them to finally nail it down,
Hmm.
and they went to Antarctica. And
Hmm.
even so, after filming and photographing the 24-hour sun,
Hmm.
once that was brought back, and it was even done live, by the
Hmm.
way, so it was all things included, people doubled down.
Yeah.
So, but here's what they did: they jumped over what was just presented them,
Hmm.
leaped over it, and then started finding excuses
Hmm.
to and avoid that. This is called cognitive dissonance,
Hmm.
and it's a human thing where we get comfortable
Hmm.
with the way we understand the world, which we can categorize as a paradigm.
Hmm.
So the way things are ordered in the world, the way I understand it, this is comforting for me. Maybe I've been taught most of the stuff. Maybe this is how I. But now I have this framework for the world.
Yeah.
And when somebody comes trekking by you and,
And
and
rocks that world. Yeah.
and drops extra information that deviates from the stability that you have come to feel secure in, um, people either check out or they find ways to
Yeah.
refute it, even if it's not accurate or not. They're
Yeah.
just battling it and battling it. But the body, the mind, wants to reject variations that do not fit within the framework that a human being, and everybody's got different variations of the framework.
Yeah.
And so this, what do you call it, cognitive dissonance, is part of us as human beings anyhow,
Sure.
because without paradigms,
Well,
without a framework for your life, my life, um, we we couldn't we need
yeah,
to
we
know
need.
a thing, right? But even if they're true or false, we rely on them to orientate us.
Mhm.
And if we don't have the ability to adapt and say, okay, well, this is wrong, and take time to process, okay, and then okay, well, that was wrong, so that no longer apply. I may prefer it. I
Mhm.
may have preference for the fact that the Earth is flat, that the this, that, or the other. I may prefer it because I feel comfortable, but I have to acknowledge in my mind if I want that's but that's not true. So we have to discard that. And so but a lot of people, it's very difficult depending on the subject and how important and all this and that, where people can't really handle, and this is human. This happens to every
Yeah.
human.
Well, and that's why I think that that sense of adventure is so important, and traveling is so important because it gets you out of that cocoon and lets you experience new things, lets you experience new people, new paradigms, if you will, but a different culture, because it is real easy to get locked into that cocoon. If you've never been anywhere else, you think the whole world operates the way you operate. And that's just not the case. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. And with technology being the way it is, it's real easy. I'm sure you could go online right now and find 15 different uh, traffic cameras or webcams right now pointed at the Eiffel Tower. But that is nothing like actually being there, going up inside of it and looking at the city from the top of it. It's nothing like grabbing a sandwich at a little cafe at the base of it. It's nothing like walking around downtown Paris and experiencing it yourself. Walking past the Notre Dame, we took a tour through the Notre Dame, and that was fascinating to me.
So before I went to California, where I knew that I was going to stay, I went to the bookstore and bought various books and charted a radius around the area where I was going to be staying,
Yeah.
the street names, the now I didn't memorize it all to a T, but I overviewed the area, the different businesses, what's here, what's there. I delved into it fully, like I really went to town with it. I was in my
Yeah.
20s, and
Yeah.
it was almost like a battle plan of sorts,
Yeah.
unique to the area. And so when I went there and started to cross those streets with the names that I had studied,
Mhm.
now I'm in the place that I was before, just viewing from the book and this and that.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say there's a difference between, of course, like you're explaining, between
Mhm.
study and going there. But if you don't study and you go there, you could be in front of the Eiffel Tower as an example, or any other landmark, and continue being ignorant
Mhm.
about many details, because another part of actually being there, other than the sensory moment,
Mhm.
is the what you call the background surrounding information,
Mhm.
which doesn't necessarily follow that just because you're there. Because how many tourists go to places and have no clue? They're just there because of the
Yeah.
iconic name or this or that. They don't know
Yeah.
all the ins and outs. So there's various things that are going on as well, depending on the
Mhm.
person's level of interest. You could miss out a lot, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
one being there, if you don't, it's like when you visit a, like, last thing I'll say, when you visit when I've visited a museum, like when my parents took me to um, the Smithsonian up in
Mhm.
Washington.
Mhm.
Um, I remember us going in, but I was very young at that time. I was a teenager.
Mhm.
I remember just looking at the dinosaurs, and then they had all this ancient stuff in little cubicle
Mhm.
glass whatnots.
Mhm.
And I remember looking at them, but rushing through, looking, oh, which is the cool item?
Yeah.
And I kept going. As opposed to today, I would say, oh, here's a chalice from ancient Rome, and
Mhm.
there's information on it. I might
Yeah.
sit and read about it and sort of contemplate it. Whereas before I said, oh, there's a cup. Okay, that's cool. Okay, gold. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But you're not. So it's also dependent on a person's, um,
Yeah.
age, focus, this, that, and all that good stuff.
And priorities and what you got going on with your life right there. We went to the Louvre and we did go see the Mona Lisa. We saw Michelangelo's David. We did see what else did we see there? Well, Linda could say more because I It's been a while and I'm tired. But most of the people, most of the tourists who go to the Louvre walk into the museum, go straight to the Mona Lisa, spend 3 minutes looking at it, and then leave. And we wandered around the Egyptian exhibition in there, the artifacts that they had dug up in ancient Egypt. We walked around for a good 3 hours, just looking at the various, just the little statues, the little icons. There was other things, but we just found ourselves in this one particular section. And the Louvre is a huge museum. You could spend days in that place. And we spent a good few hours just wandering around this one area. And it's just like you said. Oh, this little frog icon was found. The Egyptian statues. Remember the baboon. I remember the baboon. I'll tell Eloy about it when we're not live because I don't want to get demonetized. Well, we're not monetized, but I don't want to get in trouble from YouTube.
Was it a phallic situation?
Yes, it was a phallic situation. And suffice it to say, Homeboy was blessed. But, I put it to you this, but it made that much of an impression. We were there in 1997.
And he was still, and he was still
And she
like
remembers
a rock.
it.
Even then,
She remembers it. So, I mean, there were all kinds of things. I mean, but it's
that
just
monkey,
a different culture.
that monkey's had 2,000 years to regret it.
Yeah, well,
Let me
Uh,
go back.
so anyway, but
That
yeah,
was one. That was one too far. That was one too
well,
far.
no, but the funny part of it is that wasn't the only one. That was the funny part.
So the,
But anyhow,
you know what you know what Tutankhamun? What we don't have enough of these phallic monkeys. I think we should populate half of Upper Egypt with more statuettes. What say you? Yeah, let's get about 5,000 people to work on those.
well, they had the people that didn't have anything else to do, so it's like, go for it, homeboy.
What are we
You
gonna?
know?
What are we gonna?
Well,
Wait.
you're saying this as a joke. The problem is it's 100% true.
You
Go
know,
to that section of the museum and you'll see for yourself.
you know what? It's about 1,500 BC. Tutankhamun, and our population needs something to focus on. What, pray tell, monkeys? No, that's not good enough.
No,
Monkeys and
baboons
what?
aren't monkeys, but yes,
Baboon. What was it? Baboons?
it was baboons.
Baboons. Okay, baboons
But
sounds
they
good.
weren't the only one. There were also wolves and there were dogs and there were, I mean, just you name it. There was all kinds of weird Egyptian creatures and stuff, oxen and what have you.
What are we gonna occupy our time with for the next few hundred years? Uh,
Um,
let's go
and,
with
and I'm not going to highlight your comment, Jim, but that wasn't what it was. This was all spiritual idolatry, is what it was.
yeah. See, Jim, what you're doing is you're cheap
Now,
something deep and
for
and meaningful.
for that, you had to go to the Romans because the Romans they had that around for centuries. Believe me.
You know what? In the 1980s, Al Gore and Tipper
Mm.
Gore would have banned all of Egypt and Rome, just
Yeah.
like they tried.
Well, the Christians really, really tried at Herculaneum and what was the other town? Vesuvius erupted and wiped out the town. There was Herculaneum and
Pompeii.
Pompeii. That they tried. They tried. Oh my God, we got to get rid of this stuff. And thankfully, the archaeologist said, "You ain't touching squat. Leave it alone."
Hey, Tipper, yeah. Can you throw a tarp over that baboon? Okay, no problem.
Yeah, I think Dee Snyder said it best. She went looking for this and she thought she found it. Yeah.
Let me just throw this side road in as
Okay.
a slow departure into the landing area. And
Personally, I think we need to make a rapid departure, but go for it. Anything to change the subject.
well, no, well, it's actually related, but it has nothing to do with
Uh-oh.
baboon, sphere,
Idolatry.
Lancelot stuff.
Mhm.
Lancelot, you see how I
Yeah, I did.
the okay, um, which has nothing to do with
Get
Egypt.
on,
It's more of a British thing, but I made a bridge there.
get on with it.
So, just this past week,
Mhm,
two Italian investigators, archaeologists slash whatnot of ancient Egypt history
mhm,
had released a paper back in 2022
mhm,
and recently have at least put out, they haven't, I don't know that they've released a paper yet, maybe they have,
mhm,
but they used lidar
mhm.
type
Okay.
and they scanned the pyramids,
Mhm,
and the images produced the following. The pyramids, as we've known,
mhm,
has what it has inside, but what we didn't know is that it penetrated the ground, the lidar.
mhm.
I think there's another name other than lidar, but I'm using that as its
Yeah.
replacement for the moment. It's another type of technique.
Mhm,
Below it are these pillars
mhm,
that go down for a mile and change, and they have spirals on the outer parts of them.
mhm,
And at the base are these huge, sort of like boxes, structures that they sit in.
mhm.
Um, and now people are scratching their head because it's bringing up a lot of questions. Because, um, well, it's just it's been unknown. Some people have suggested that something was known in the past,
Mhm.
but now these people have brought it to the fore. I don't know when they're going to release a paper or if they're going to release a paper. It looks like
Yeah.
they are, but it's bringing up a lot of questions. It's adding to the mystery and mystique of of this. I
Mhm,
just find it super interesting that why would they do that, and what kind of man force and time period, all these things start to come up.
mhm.
Um, so it's very curious.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen anything like that on
You sent me one clip that I saw a little bit of, but then I had to leave, so I didn't watch the whole clip. But yeah, I mean that's what this investigation stuff is for. That's why we continue to investigate sites that we think we already know, because when new technology like this comes out, why not use it on something you already know? See, um, the pyramids are probably some of the, well, number one, they're easy to get to. We know where they are. They're easy to get to. If you can work with their government, the government is very open to learning more as long as it's not destructive. So that's an obvious first place to try out these new techniques and new technologies. I'm all for it. We need that. But again, it's that adventurous brain. We need that because that's the only way we find out. All we can do right now is speculate,
well,
but
we can only speculate now. But my
but I
question, go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't think we're ever really going to know A, what they are, B, what they're for, or C, how they get there
Because they're
un-
underground.
until they dig one up. And that's going to be a hard sell. And it's going to have to be one of the smaller, lesser pyramids to see A, is the similar structure there? And if so, can we excavate to get to it? I don't mean dig the whole damn thing up, but I mean, can we excavate to get a look at what this is, what it's made out
The
of,
image
you know?
shows, one of the graphs show that there's the pyramid
Mhm,
and there's that center chamber,
mhm,
but below it at the base of the pyramid, there's five
mhm,
similar chambers, and what these chambers are like little houses in
mhm,
stone, where it
mhm.
has a little pitched roof and then a block. It's kind of like a little phone
Yeah,
booth looking thing. It's not little, but whatever.
yeah.
There's five of them at the base of the pyramid, and below them
Mhm,
are these huge pillar tubes or whatnot
mhm.
that go directly down for a kilometer or some change, and they land inside these huge boxes, down that
Mhm.
amount, and
Right.
it just
Well,
starts to make you wonder what the heck.
well, they have. dated the pyramids. They know about when they were built, but they also know that that was the ground level at that time. But who's to say what was there before the pyramids were? Was that a piece of bare ground, or did they build those pyramids on top of some other structure? We can only guess. But
That's a good question. What did they build it on top of? Was it a symbolic something of the
yeah,
past for them,
was it a special site?
previous to our
Hmm.
even knowledge of like something even more ancient?
Exactly, exactly my point. So who's to say? But that's why this kind of thing is so important, is because if we truly want to know the truth, we have to keep investigating and exploring. And if we've got some sort of new technology that allow us to do it easier, non-destructively, by all means. And the pyramids is a great place to start because, as I said, the advantages to starting there are numerous. You don't have to look for them. We know where they are.
So, um, I looked into recently using
Mhm,
a co-pilot and all that because I wanted to explore. I said, well, wait a second, this, that, and the other, and I started asking and delving into that.
mhm,
The original people that started settling in that area,
mhm.
5,000 years ago or more,
Yeah,
lived in small numbers and cultivated, the basic necessities, and they lived in little mud brick type things.
yeah.
And I asked about the original pharaoh, like the first person, like the first pharaoh, and he said, well, the first dynasty um, was when they unified Upper and Lower Egypt, and
Mhm.
they had that crown, and you can see it in some of the engravings later on, but that early, they don't know much of the early ones. But
Wasn't
here's
it?
the thing.
Wasn't it the Scorpion King or something like that?
I don't know that bit, but
Okay.
like I just asked this thing, and this is what I
Mhm,
remember from that questioning. But I asked it. Well, wait a second. But in that time, there were no pyramids. What did they live in? Mud huts? And it says yes, they lived in huts. They would have had a more palatial sort of hut type thing
mhm,
than the average citizen, obviously, or
mhm.
person there. So like basic, but so eventually the pyramids began, and there was that whole era. But then there was this drop off, or not drop off time. The change happened when Alexander the Great came into Egypt
Mhm,
and took it.
mhm.
And from that moment, he installed his the
The
Ptolemy
Ptolemy, yeah.
people, which were part of a Greek Macedonian world,
Mhm,
and that genetic introduced into Egypt.
mhm.
Um, and what I want to say is that interestingly, on my mother's direct genetic mtDNA
Mhm,
test, which comes through my aunt that did it, her sister,
mhm.
so we would have the same one. It doesn't change as much as the male, even though the male is very direct and
Yeah.
stable. The female one is like ancient as heck. Well,
Mhm.
or like it doesn't change much across time per se.
Not as many mutations, yeah.
Yeah, so I end up having, through my aunt, through my mom, through me, through our grandmother, or my mom's mother, um, I end up having samples, ancient and modern, of people from across Europe, to include Egypt, which is what I was going to, but people that are, what would you call it, royalty or nobles
Mhm,
in places like Denmark, in places like Germany, where those women,
mhm.
we come from that same line through the maternal, which has now they've arrived at the conclusion, fairly strong, that early on you had your clans, and the women were, um, they'd go to different places, either by attacks or
Mhm.
because of. But there was a movement of maternity
Yes.
across the world
Mhm,
based on that movement of maternity and paternity too. But we're talking about the. It means that when a woman goes from one clan in one area and appears in another far distant away, she's introducing local DNA from, say, somewhere in the Middle East, let's say, or in the steppes of Europe,
mhm.
or of Asia, now into Spain or England or
Mhm.
Denmark or Germany, and
Yeah.
then those of German women that are go to other villages somewhere like, I don't know, Greece
Mhm.
or Asia or whatever. And so this mixing, which is unheard of in our concepts prior to this whole DNA thing, is evident. So now I have all these. I'll show you one day when we have a chat. But long story short, we have a mummy
Mhm.
from the Ptolemy that matches our line. Now, it doesn't mean that they would be a cousin back in the Bronze Age.
Mhm.
So it would branch. Our lines would branch from a common
Yeah.
mother somewhere, and eventually they'd become Egyptian, and
Mhm.
we'd become Spanish through thousands of years.
Well, if you look at it geographically, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, the genetics say that it happened, but
Well, yeah,
it kind of makes sense if you look at the geography because it's not that far in the great grand scheme of things.
no, but the thing is that just like, so I'll say it this way, just like one mother thousands of years ago produced a line that directly female ended up in Egypt, and another line ended up in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
That mother also produced a line that ended up in England
Mm-hmm.
and ended up in Germany and
Yes.
Denmark. So the distance is not only geographic, but it's also across millennia.
Yeah.
And because of the millennia
Mm-hmm.
distance, woman's DNA propagated across the world,
Yep.
and other women's DNA propagated across the world
Mm-hmm.
in a spider's web, producing men and women that had DNA from all other places.
Yeah.
So, in other words, fair enough with what you're saying, but at the same time, it's true across Europe and the world,
Yeah.
where there's interchanging of things. So that's how come you'll see. That's how come we have Jew through that line: Jewish, German, English, Spanish, even Guanche.
Mm-hmm.
So we, there's two mummies
Mm-hmm.
that were dug up on another island. Well, on two islands of the archipelago of the
Mm-hmm.
Canary Islands,
Yeah.
which basically have the same um, maternal thing as us. But that, and it happens to be that we come from the Canary Islands, so it could very well be
Yeah.
that, I mean, those mummies have been tested. So the mummies, so basically this, those mummies that were native to the
Mm-hmm.
islands
Yeah.
have European direct maternal lines. It's
It
not that,
makes sense.
right, because they came to the islands from
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in, or actually from North Africa, but the Romans were in North Africa, so
Mm-hmm.
they gave birth to, or they had relations with women of North Africa.
Sure.
Those women had, and so it just
Yeah.
continues
Just
churning around. So what I'm getting at is that in a one way or the other, I would be connected somehow to Egypt. It's a distant call, but
sure.
that's not the point. The point is that we can say that we are the inheritors of all this archaeological history. So we can feel
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, this is important to us as a modern
Mm-hmm.
population. And now genetically we could see that, well, there's reason to conclude
Mm-hmm.
that at some point there were people back there that we would have attached to that would have been from that area. So that kind of idea, it opens the mind to like, wow, possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's freaking mind blowing.
It is.
Honestly,
It is. And that's what I was talking about when we were back in the green room. We were discussing before we went live that we just our existence, the very fact that we are here,
oh yeah, that's
is
right.
the result of we are basically miracles. Every one of us. We are the result of a certain specific set of circumstances that had to come together exactly perfectly
Yeah,
to lead down to us.
that's how
Because
it's.
if anything changed along the way, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be us. We are the result of a very specific set of events that occurred either by accident or on purpose, that led to us.
Yeah. In
The,
fact, you could say that about everybody in America, because if you think of America,
well,
it was populated by people that made decisions back in Europe and other places
mhm,
at given times that produced actions that put their butts in a boat to come over at the right time, and maybe they were in one township,
mhm.
but then they had to go to work in another township here,
But
and based on that, all of a
mhm,
sudden little Timmy's born, and then it keeps
yeah,
rolling
and
on.
but that's anywhere in the world, not just necessarily America. Everybody in the world, their ancestry followed a similar pattern.
Only
They
in
had
America.
to have, otherwise
Oh,
they wouldn't be there.
only in East LA.
Yeah, I mean, if one of Jim Dockerell's ancestors had woke up 15 minutes late, he might not be here. I mean, things had to happen the way they happened, otherwise we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
I guess I'll end it with this thing, at least on my end.
yeah.
I one time asked my dad a question, and I remember we were standing by the dining room table in the hallway. I said, "Dad, I was like a teenager, dude." And I was like, "Dad, you know what? To be honest with you, think about this." I said, if Castro wouldn't have done what he did, you and Mom wouldn't have met here in Miami, and therefore I wouldn't exist. So in a strange way, and he said, "No, no, no, no." He said, "No, no, 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 that doesn't work like that." And he kept going.
That's funny. I'm sorry. That's funny.
He shut me down quickly, but
You want to talk about shaking up somebody's paradigm?
yeah,
Do you realize how badly you rocked his world with that?
yeah. Well, because think about it though, it's what you're saying.
I know, that's the funny part about it. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to laugh. I don't mean to make light of this,
Well,
all right?
imagine
But
any of the number of displacements, like the Irish people.
yeah, I know exactly that, and they were all tragedies.
If you
Believe
think of if you think of so in a way, look, in a way, we can't, obviously one thing doesn't excuse the other,
right.
but if you think of like the certain animosities, historically speaking,
Hmm.
that the Irish have towards the British, based
Hmm.
on
Yeah.
trying to control their area and this and
Mhm.
that, um, the same argument would apply. Where imagine Irish kids walking around Boston were to come up to their parents and say, "Hey, well, if it weren't for all these Travis, and that wouldn't match with the it would be ironic,
Mhm.
and it is.
Mhm.
But then again, Mark, we're also the product of people. I mean, so look, I gotta say this: Bronze Age wise, pivotal moment that formed what Europeans are today. If it weren't for people from the East coming into Western Europe and completely replacing, especially in the British Isles, completely is not completely because there's variation too, but overwhelmingly, all the men that existed in the British Isles up until that point were no longer having sex with the females of the British Isles. Instead, it was these people from the East that came in and said, "You know what? This is our place now, son." And so
Mhm.
now every male that's British or German or Spanish or French or Denmark or Norwegian, whatever, on average, above average actually, is Yamnaya people anciently. So the men of Europe are actually, Bronze Age wise, people from the East, from Asia,
Mhm.
that came in, replaced all the males. So the actual males, in your case, no. In your case, you had a different route
Mhm.
and you remained and your line continued.
Mhm.
So it would be the I-2, I think it is. So you,
I2A, yes.
so you would have been surrounded by these events,
Mhm.
your ancient fathers.
In our own little valley, nice and unnoticed.
Well, no. What would have been more than likely is that even though all these Yamnai are surrounding the area,
Mhm.
and mixing, and as time goes on, whoever your fathers were would have simply integrated into the process, but his line wasn't extinguished by this overwhelming R1B. So the other people around him wouldn't have known that your father at that time wasn't part of their gang. He would have just become part of the tribe moving forward in time, just like any other um haplogroups.
Mhm.
It would have been none the wiser to them. He's just a fellow buddy of ours, and they wouldn't know that they were R1B. They would have
Mhm.
just thought we're part of the invasion and we're here to conquer. So I don't know if that makes sense, right? I mean, what
Yeah.
I'm saying, it just all blended in. You don't know whether one guy is from
No,
Kentucky,
we don't. It's, your tribe, and that's about it.
right? And so this place, so we don't. Those events is similar to like what I asked my father, or this Irish thing where, um, if it weren't for that, we wouldn't be here.
Mhm.
So it's kind of crazy because
Well, I was just thinking about your father, as anti-Castro as he was, and always wanted to go back to Cuba. He didn't want to stay in America. He wanted Castro gone, and he wanted the family property back, and rightly so. For you to come up and say that was talk about rocking his paradigm, you know.
it was because I came to that realization. So, well, wait a second, we're always talking about this thing about Castro, but if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be walking around.
Yeah.
So I had to ask him, and he didn't. He wasn't having it.
I love that answer. No, 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 no. That's not how it works. I
Yeah,
love that answer. I love that.
he walked away. He did not.
You know what? I Your father passed. God bless him. Your father passed many, many years before you and I met. I know I wouldn't know the man if he come up and smacked me upside the head, but I love him. I love him.
He was a serious. He was a stoic. My dad was a very stoic person.
Uh-huh.
Um, ve- yeah, he was very stoic. I am not. I am in many ways. I am, but I'm a little bit more of a blend of my mom and my dad,
Mm.
which would, I guess, would make sense. But
Yeah.
but I'm yeah, he was a stoic person.
Hmm.
Yeah, he would have. Well, he did. He was ready to lay down his life,
Hmm.
literally knowing the odds were, and he went and joined the army to
Yeah.
go invade the island, which was the outcome was not going to be good. The second round
Hmm.
was not going to be good. So if that wouldn't have changed, I wouldn't. You know what I'm
You would.
saying?
Yep. You
So
again wouldn't be here. Yep.
yeah. All right. Well, I think
I'm.
it's time to sort of land.
Yeah. I'm ready to land. I'm about wore out. I'm
Okay.
whooped pup tonight.
All right, guys. So we go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time, and we're here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast. On YouTube, we also have a site over on Facebook, which is Trampled Underfoot Podcast. Facebook, check that out for items that we post there, links to videos we talk about, and so on. And we also have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, and catch our past episodes over there. You can download them as well. And we're sponsored by.
Whoops. Hit the wrong button. I am so tired. Harneal Media. I'm not tired of talking about Steve at Harneal Media. If you're even toying with the idea of a website, a web store, you want to sell merch, Steve has you covered. Do yourself a favor. Carry yourself over to harnealmedia.com. Click on that contact us button. Have a chat with Steve. He can help you. Believe me, he can help you. He helps me all the time. He helps us all the time. Very, very competitively priced, 100% personalized service. So do yourself a favor, get over to harnealmedia.com, HARNEAL, media.com, sponsor of trampleunderfootpodcast.com.
All right. All right. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. We hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Do the things you love, but do it safely if you can. And we'll be back same time, same channel, right here on YouTube. Be safe. See ya.
Landed, Earl.